All right, ready to dive into this European pigmentation research? It's going to turn what you think you know on its head. You probably heard that simple story.
Oh, yeah.
Humans leave sunny Africa, head north, less sun equals lighter skin, end of story.
Right, right.
The classic tale.
Not so fast.
Yeah.
Turns out it's way more interesting than that.
Way more, way more. We've
Yeah.
got this new study using ancient DNA going way back.
Yeah.
Some samples are 45,000 years old. It's like peeking into the past directly,
Wow.
instead of just making guesses based on people today.
45,000 years. That's mind-boggling. So what did this ancient DNA time machine reveal?
Well, the first surprise is that dark pigmentation was the norm in Europe.
Really?
Far longer than we thought. Even during the Copper and Iron Ages, thousands of years after agriculture was established, about half the individuals studied still had darker skin.
That's wild. We're talking, what, 5,000 to 3,000 years ago? People were smelting metal and farming, but still rocking the melanin?
Yeah.
Makes you realize that image we have of ancient Europeans needs a serious update. Yeah.
Huge update.
Yeah.
It really challenges the old idea that light skin just took over rapidly once humans left Africa.
Right.
Instead, we're seeing the first light-skinned individuals appearing only around the Mesolithic period, about 12,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, they're outliers. Widespread light skin is more of a Bronze and Iron Age phenomenon.
So the timeline is way more stretched out than we assume.
Much more, yeah.
But here's where I got really tripped up.
Okay.
Eye color.
Mm-hmm.
You're telling me skin gets lighter gradually,
Yeah.
but blue eyes have this weird spike during the Mesolithic.
Yeah.
Then dip back down in the Neolithic.
Right.
And then come back again later.
It's a head scratcher.
That's a real head scratcher.
Yeah.
What was going on with blue eyes back then? Were they the hot new thing for a while?
It's a fascinating puzzle. Right now, it could be a few things. Maybe
Yeah.
it's just random genetic drift.
Yeah. Where gene frequencies fluctuate by chance, or perhaps there were environmental pressures specific to certain regions that favored blue eyes for a bit. There's even the possibility of social preference, where blue eyes were considered desirable, leading to their temporary increase.
Okay, so maybe blue eyes were like the ancient version of a fashion trend? I kind of love that idea.
Yeah.
But seriously, it sounds like we need more research to crack this blue-eyed code.
Absolutely. The mystery remains.
Yeah.
There's much more digging to do.
Okay.
But let's not forget the big picture.
Right.
The shift towards lighter skin does seem to line up with a major event.
Okay.
The Neolithic Revolution
Yes.
and the arrival of those Anatolian farmers between 8,000 and 4,000 years ago.
Okay.
For those listening who need a geography refresher,
Yeah.
Anatolia is modern-day Turkey. These farmers brought their lighter skin genes with them,
Right.
mixing things up in Europe's genetic pool.
So it wasn't a simple case of dark-skinned hunter-gatherers being completely replaced by light-skinned farmers.
Yeah. Not at all. It's more like this complex dance of migration, gene flow, that's the mixing of genes between populations, and adaptation. It's messy, it's interactive,
Yeah.
and it's way more interesting than just a clean sweep.
This is making me realize that even into the Iron Age, with all this mixing going on, darker pigmentation was still common
Oh, yeah?
in parts of Southern Europe, Russia, Central Asia. So it's not like light skin was some kind of evolutionary must-have.
Right.
It was more like one option in a whole toolbox of adaptations shaped not just by the environment, but maybe by culture too.
Exactly. And getting into the specifics of how researchers figured this out,
Yeah.
they actually pinpointed certain genes tied to these color changes.
Okay.
Take SLC24A5 and TYR.
Great.
Two big players in the development of light skin. What's mind-blowing is that SLC24A5 is practically in every modern European,
Wow.
but almost entirely missing from the oldest samples.
So if SLC24A5 was like the breakout star of light-skinned genes,
Yeah.
what about those other traits? Eye color, hair color. Were there specific genes leading the charge there too?
You bet. Eye color is influenced by genes like OCA2, while hair color gets its cues from MC1R and HAR2. It's like this whole orchestra of genes playing a symphony of pigmentation.
And here's the part that really blew my mind. Some of these pigment traits might not have just evolved gradually, but actually came from interbreeding with other groups like Neanderthals.
Yeah.
Talk about a tangled family tree.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder what other borrowed traits we might be carrying around without even knowing it.
It really highlights how human evolution isn't this neat and tidy progression. It's more like a swirling mix of adaptations, migrations, chance encounters, and even a little bit of genetic borrowing from other human species.
So we've gone from this simplistic story of sun goes down, skin gets lighter, to this incredibly intricate tapestry of genetic changes.
Right.
I'm starting to see why this research is such a big deal, but I think a lot of folks might be wondering, so what? Why should we care about the skin color of people who lived thousands of years ago?
That's a great question, and it gets to the heart of why this research is so important.
Yeah.
First off, understanding pigmentation helps us understand how humans have adapted to different environments over time.
Okay.
It's a window into our deep evolutionary past. But even more importantly, it challenges the very idea of race as a biological category. For far too long, skin color has been used to divide people and justify discrimination.
Right, like those old school racial categories are somehow baked into our genes,
Yeah.
making some groups inherently different from others.
Exactly. And this research completely dismantles that notion.
Yeah.
It shows just how fluid and complex pigmentation is, undermining the idea that there are clear-cut racial boundaries based on skin color.
Right.
If anything, it shows that our differences are superficial compared to our shared ancestry.
It's like those lines we've drawn to divide people up racially.
Yeah.
They're totally arbitrary, based on a misunderstanding of how evolution actually works.
Precisely. We're all part of one interconnected human family, regardless of skin color. This research is a powerful reminder of that.
This is making me think about all those harmful stereotypes and prejudices that still exist today,
Right?
often based on those very same faulty ideas about race. It's like this research is giving us the scientific ammunition to fight back against that kind of thinking.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so this study has answered some questions, but I bet it's also raised a bunch of new ones.
Uh-huh.
What are the big mysteries you're hoping future research will tackle?
There's still so much we don't know. For example, was sunlight the only factor driving pigmentation changes? Or did things like diet, clothing, and even social preferences play a role?
Interesting.
We need to explore those cultural and environmental influences in more detail.
Yeah, I'm really curious about those cultural factors. Could there have been times and places where certain skin tones were considered more desirable, maybe influencing mate selection? It's not that far-fetched when you think about how fashion and beauty standards change over time.
Absolutely. And another area ripe for exploration is the link between pigmentation genes and other traits.
Okay.
We know that some of these genes are involved in vitamin D production and immune function. Could those connections have also shaped the evolution of pigmentation?
So maybe there's a link between skin color and susceptibility to certain diseases. It's like a whole web of interconnected adaptations waiting to be untangled.
Exactly. And as we continue to explore those connections, we'll gain a deeper understanding not just of pigmentation, but of the broader story of human evolution.
Okay, this has been an incredible journey so far, but let's get even more granular for a moment.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier that this study used a probabilistic genotype likelihood method to analyze the ancient DNA.
Uh-huh.
Can you break that down for us non-scientists?
Yeah.
It sounds pretty intense.
It might sound complicated, but it's actually pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Ancient DNA is often fragmented and degraded, making it difficult to analyze. This method uses statistical models to estimate the likelihood of different genotypes.
Right.
That's combinations of genes.
Based on the available data.
So it's like piecing together a puzzle with some missing pieces, using probability to fill in the gaps.
Precisely. And this approach has allowed researchers to reconstruct the genomes of ancient individuals with remarkable accuracy. It's a game changer for the field.
That's awesome. Okay, let's talk genes. We keep hearing about these superstars of pigmentation, SLC24A5 and TYR.
Yeah.
What makes them so important?
These are two of the most well-studied genes involved in skin pigmentation.
Okay.
SLC24A5 is especially fascinating because it shows such a clear pattern of change over time.
Yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, it's almost universal in modern Europeans, but nearly absent in those oldest samples.
So SLC24A5 really was like the breakout star driving the shift towards lighter skin.
It certainly appears that way, and the fact that it became so prevalent in a relatively short amount of time suggests it provided a significant evolutionary advantage.
Interesting. So what about TYR? What's its role?
TYR is all about melanin production. That's the pigment that gives skin its color.
Different versions of this gene can affect the amount and type of melanin produced, leading to a whole spectrum of skin tones.
So TYR is like the master conductor of melanin production.
Exactly. And just like SLC24A5, TYR shows signs of selection, meaning certain versions of this gene were favored over time, likely because of their impact on pigmentation.
Okay, so we've got these two heavy hitters, SLC24A5 and TYR, playing a major role in skin color. What about the genes behind eye and hair color? Did this study shed any light on
Oh,
those?
it did. OCA2 is a key gene for eye color. It influences melanin production in the iris, determining whether you have blue, green, brown, or hazel eyes.
So it's like a melanin maestro, but for our eyes this time.
Exactly. And then we have MC1R and HRC2, both involved in hair color. MC1R is particularly intriguing because it's responsible for those red and yellow pigments, while HRC actually influences how OCA2 is expressed, which, as we discussed, impacts eye color.
Wow, it's like a domino effect with these genes, one influencing the other. It's amazing how these tiny variations in our DNA can have such a big impact on our appearance.
It really is. It highlights the complexity and interconnectedness of our genes.
Yeah.
Even traits that seem simple on the surface, like eye or hair color, are often the result of a complex interplay of multiple genes.
Now, one of the most mind-blowing parts of this study is the idea that some of these pigmentation traits might have come from interbreeding with other human species, like Neanderthals.
Right.
That just seems wild to me. Can you tell us more about that?
It's a reminder that human evolution isn't always about adapting to the environment on our own.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes it's about borrowing adaptations from other groups through interbreeding.
So it's like evolution getting a little boost from its friends.
Exactly. And in the case of European pigmentation, there's evidence that some of the genes for lighter skin and hair might have come from Neanderthals.
Whoa, so we're not just talking about different groups of humans mixing, but different human species altogether.
Yeah.
That adds a whole new layer of complexity to our understanding of evolution.
It does, and it underscores the fact that our evolutionary history is full of surprises. We're still uncovering evidence of interbreeding between different hominin groups, and those discoveries are changing how we view our origins.
It's like peeling back the layers of a genetic onion, revealing more and more complexity with each new discovery.
Precisely. And that's what makes this field so exciting.
Yeah.
We're constantly pushing the boundaries of knowledge, and each new study reveals another piece of the intricate puzzle of human evolution.
So let's switch gears for a moment and talk about the implications of this research for how we understand race.
Right.
You mentioned earlier that it challenges the very notion of race as a biological category. Can you unpack that a bit more?
Of course. For centuries, people have tried to categorize humans into distinct races based on physical characteristics like skin color. But this research shows that those categories are arbitrary and meaningless from a biological perspective.
Interesting.
Pigmentation is influenced by a multitude of genes, and it varies continuously across populations, making any attempt to draw rigid lines between racial categories based on those genes completely nonsensical.
So it's not like there's a European gene and an African gene for skin color.
Right.
It's more like a spectrum, not a set of rigid categories.
Exactly. And the fact that some pigmentation genes came from interbreeding between different hominin groups further blurs those lines.
Right.
It's impossible to pinpoint a single race gene because those genes have been mixed and remixed throughout our evolutionary history.
It's like trying to draw a neat line on a map and saying everyone on this side is one race and everyone on that side is another.
Yeah,
But the reality is far more fluid and interconnected.
precisely. The concept of race as a biological category just doesn't hold up to scientific scrutiny. It's a social construct, not a biological reality.
It's pretty sobering when you realize that despite the overwhelming scientific evidence, race continues to be used to justify discrimination and inequality. It shows how deeply ingrained these social constructs can be.
It does. But research like this can help challenge those harmful notions by demonstrating the true complexity and fluidity of human variation. By understanding that race is a social construct, not a biological reality, we can start to dismantle those outdated and dangerous ideas.
It's like science is giving us the tools to deconstruct those harmful stereotypes that have persisted for far too long.
It is. And it's a reminder that science can and should play a role in promoting social justice and equality.
Well said. We've covered so much ground today, from the nitty-gritty of ancient DNA analysis to the broader implications of this research for understanding race and human evolution.
Yeah, it's been a good one.
Before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think the most important takeaway is that human evolution is a process that's still happening today.
Right.
We're not static beings.
Yeah.
We're constantly changing and adapting, and that's what makes us so remarkable.
It's a journey of a discovery, both for us as individuals and for humanity as a whole.
Exactly. And the more we learn about our past, the better equipped we are to navigate the future.
It really makes you wonder what other surprises are still out there, just waiting to be discovered. If something as seemingly simple as skin color turns out to be this complex,
Oh, yeah.
what other assumptions about human evolution might we need to rethink?
That's a great point. It highlights how much we still don't know and
Right.
how important it is to keep questioning those assumptions.
Yeah.
We can't take anything for granted when it comes to human evolution. What seems like a straightforward story on the surface could be hiding a whole world of complexity underneath.
It's like we've only just scratched the surface of understanding our own story.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, before we let you go, I have to ask, what's the one big takeaway you want our listener to ponder after this deep dive? What's that question that should be swirling around in their head long after this episode is over?
That's a good one. I'd say this.
Yeah.
If something as seemingly straightforward as skin color turns out to be this intricate,
Yeah?
this interwoven with migration, adaptation,
Right.
and even interbreeding with other human species,
Right.
what other simple stories about human evolution might we be missing?
Right.
What other assumptions might we be clinging to that future research could completely overturn?
It's a fantastic question to leave everyone with. It's a reminder that the story of human evolution is constantly being rewritten as we uncover new evidence and challenge old assumptions.
Absolutely.
So to our listener out there, keep questioning, keep exploring,
Keep digging.
and keep diving deep into the amazing world of human evolution. We'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.